Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we are continuing with Andrew Harvey in discussion of and appreciation of Rumi during this year of celebration of Rumi, the great poet, arguably the finest we have in our Western and Middle Eastern tradition. Andrew has translated Rumi into English from actually several languages and has overseen translations and has also written his own books on Rumi, one being The Teachings of Rumi. And Rumi has been a deep, long-term inspiration and guiding light for Andrew. So we're very pleased to have Andrew back with us to discuss the meaning, the pith, the power, and the guiding light for us all at this particular time in our history when we so deeply need very deep divine guidance. And what could be better than receiving such through the poetic word?
In our first conversation, we decided that Rumi's message had 7 different aspects. And
yes.
We got so excited that we only got through 2 of them. But so now we're going to try and go faster.
5, right.
And the third one, I think, the first one was that he really understood our divine identity. Not understood it, lived it, flamed out with it. Second is that he really did, because he had the divine vision, see the divinity of the creation. And we need desperately to be in touch with that divinity if we're not going to go on destroying
creation
it.
As divine.
Creation as divine. Creation as a flaming out of what the mystics of Islam call the attributes of God. Mm-hmm. That the whole creation is a constant epiphany of different aspects of the divine. So that if you're in divine consciousness, you're experiencing the gazelle as the delicacy of God, the anemone as the purple of God, the voice of the wild woman singing as the voice of the sacred feminine. It is a constant divine epiphany.
It is an outpicturing of what is true divinely within.
Yes, and it's that the light of the divine is breaking up into all of these different pieces, but they all are aspects of the light. They're all manifestations of the light.
This view, Andrew, is so vitally important, contradistinct from other ways of other religious perspectives, which create a heaven above and earth sometimes as purgatory or hell.
Right.
And this is material as lesser than spiritual.
Right. I think, though, that you have to go through a kind of death to get this vision. And that brings us to the third aspect that's so important. And that is, let's put it really boldly, the world is going through what the mystics call the dark night of the soul. All human agendas and illusions are being shattered at the moment. And it feels like total annihilation to so many people. But what Rumi is telling us, as someone who's gone through this shattering, is that this shattering is not the end. It is, in fact, the preparation for an extraordinary beginning. He is a kind of phoenix. And he's teaching us how to be phoenixes in this great fire of destruction that we're living in. Exactly. And that he's speaking to us of the resurrection that comes after this tremendous process.
And yet, when we're in the midst of it, it does not appear that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, no, and not more than that, it feels terrible. Because the stripping and burning and searing of the death of our illusions is not a pretty thing. And all the
just the contrary.
It's horrific.
Well, one of its characteristics is that it doesn't feel that there is any hope, there is any way out of it.
And there is no human hope.
Yeah.
Because any human hope would be hope of the wrong thing, said St. John of the Cross. In the state where you're purified of all of your human fantasy, all human hope, all human ingenuity, all human stratagems are actually burnt away. Yeah. And you feel that you're dying, and you are. But something that is not human in you, but is the divine consciousness in you, is released by this death and then begins slowly to take you over. And that is a kind of miracle, which Rumi celebrates in this amazing poem.
This is something is being given birth to amidst the death.
That's it. It can only be given birth to through the death. Right. And this is what's happening in the world. And everybody out there who is going through the pain...
It's a recapitulation of nature is what it is.
Right. Everything is death and rebirth. Crucifixion and resurrection on every aspect of it.
Winter to spring.
Right. A cocoon and the butterfly within it, etc. Listen to this amazing poem. The grapes of my body can only become wine after the winemaker tramples me. I surrender my spirit like grapes to his trampling, so my inmost heart can blaze and dance with joy. Although the grapes go on weeping blood and sobbing, I cannot bear any more anguish, any more cruelty. The trampler stuffs cotton in his ears. I am not working in ignorance. You can deny me if you want. You have every excuse. But it is I who am the master of this work. And when through my passion you reach perfection, you will never be done praising my name. He's very honest about what it costs. You have to just let it happen. There's nothing you can do about it. But what you can do, and what your choice is, to either rebel against it and scream at God, or to surrender. And if you surrender, then the secret joy of the divine is given to you. And that joy has a secret knowledge in it too. And you hear the trampler saying to you, even as you're screaming, I am not working in ignorance. Trust me. You can deny me. You have every excuse. But it is I who am the master of this work. And when through my passion you reach perfection, when this process is ended, I swear to you, you will never be done praising my name. Just as I think that when we do come out of this horrific period, however many, if there are 3 or 4 of us left, there will be a tremendous gratitude for this purification that we've had to go through, because the human race is now on the verge of psychosis. And it has to, unfortunately, go through this devastating purification to be released from its own killing agendas. And Rumi is giving us the courage to surrender to this process.
Yeah.
But he's doing more than this, I think. And this is, I think, gets us to the 4th aspect.
This is, just to comment on that,
Yes.
would be to say this is the divine alchemical crucible.
Yes.
And the flames are flying.
Yes.
And the process is occurring.
Yes.
And it feels that there is no hope.
Yes.
There is just the thrashing.
Yes.
And through it, of course, as you say, as Rumi so beautifully states, we move through this to the birth. Who we are before conception,
Right.
we don't know.
Right.
But once the conception occurs, the flowering also occurs.
Right.
Consciousness comes back into form to be celebrated, honored, and enjoyed.
Well, I think it's that we do die, but we die in life, and we die into life.
Yes.
That the ego dies,
Yeah.
and the self, the divine self, comes forward. This is an excruciating process, and this is what whole of humanity is being put through, because the human ego now is psychotic and murderous. So it has to undergo this massive incineration, and it will. The divine has willed this, I think.
It's happening.
And that's why these great mystics are coming back, because they know this process, and they're encouraging us to surrender to the incineration.
Yes, exactly.
Go through it, they're saying to us, because there's resurrection on the other end.
Exactly. And we are psychically constellating these mystics to
Yes.
act as a guiding light for us. Even, some
Well, I put it a
flavor
little
of
different,
hope.
Mitchell. I think God is sending them to us out of infinite mercy. I think that we are pretty far gone, and as a final mercy, the beloved is sending us Jalaluddin Rumi to give us inspiration when we are so lacking it.
Try that. Let's
Try
see
that.
what happens.
Why not? Have the greatest mystic speak to you in the middle of this madness.
So what is the next tenet?
Well, I think the next tenet is something that is very important for me. You know, you and I spend a lot of time in the so-called spiritual world, and we know that so many people are taking refuge in what I call this sort of addiction to transcendence, as if spouting Eastern texts about the world being an illusion enables them to sign off from the agony of this
The
time
bliss
of doing.
bunny
I
syndrome.
hate this. It drives me completely crazy. I pray for compassion every single day for the bliss bunny. Because I'm a reformed bliss bunny myself, and one gets very angry about the things that you've been so addicted
You know, they've
to
got a
yourself.
12-step program for that.
I wish I knew. What's
Bah, Bliss Anonymous.
I don't. Unfortunately,
card-carrying
bliss is
member.
a good drug. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Rumi's one of the most important aspects of Rumi's work for me is that he speaks about what the Persian mystics called ishq. Not only speaks about it, celebrates it. And ishq is sacred passion. Real, deep, wild, intense sacred passion that's born out of this crucifixion process. What happens is that as the ego's agendas and illusions are destroyed, it feels like absolute death and horror, but when it has been destroyed, the ego, there is discovered this unbelievable fire of burning, passionate compassion at the core of oneself, which is actually the divine fire that is creating the universes. The ishq that is, you can see it in the Big Bang, you can see it in the Hubble telescopes, those screens of billions of miles of flame. That's the ishq that is creating the universe. And Rumi calls it passion. I mean, the translation I've done, it calls it passion, but it goes far beyond passion. It is that wild, fiery force of the Sacred Heart. This is the birthing force of the new divine humanity. And without this wild, fiery passion, we're not going to get through. Can I read you this poem, which is my favorite poem?
Please. I have a feeling also that this is one of the aspects of Rumi with which you have so supremely identified. You as a person, Andrew.
I found in Rumi
because you
the
embody this kind of
this.
passion and compassion.
Well, thank you.
That truly.
Well,
and it's an ever.
I don't always feel very compassionate. I'm trying.
This is the most amazing part of your
poem.
expression.
Well, I think anybody who comes to Rumi and who really allows themselves to be Rumified, who soaks in Rumi and marinates in Rumi, will be given by Rumi's great divine grace a taste of this fire, and that changes you forever.
It's a transmission.
It's a transmission. Passion burns down every branch of exhaustion. Passion is the supreme elixir and renews all things. No one can grow exhausted when passion is born. Don't sigh heavily, your brow bleak with boredom. Look for passion, 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 passion. Futile solutions deceive the force of passion. They are bandits who extort money through lies. Marshy and stagnant water is no cure for thirst, however limpid and delicious it might look. It will only trap you and stop you looking for fresh rivers that could feed and make flourish 100 gardens, just as each piece of false gold prevents you from recognizing real gold and where to find it. False gold will only cut your feet and bind your wings, saying, I will remove your difficulties, when in fact it is only dregs and defeat in the robes of victory. So run, my friends, run far away from all false solutions. Let divine passion triumph and rebirth you in yourself. Let divine passion triumph and rebirth you in yourself. Take that, all you serenity wallers, is what I...
Right.
You know, that's what Rumi is saying to us. Serenity is not going to be enough. Peace is not going to be enough. Sitting back and feeling detached about the agony of the world is not an option when the world is burning to death.
Yes.
Don't get despairing. Let the divine passion for life, let the divine passion that is creating life, let it triumph in you, take you over, possess you, and then rebirth you in your authentic self, which is your divine, passionate, compassionate self. And from that self, you go out to make radioactive mischief in the world. This is what sacred activism is those who have let this divine passion triumph and let it take them over and let it drive them back into the world out of burning compassion to really rock every rotten old boat there is to make
electrify the planet.
To electrify themselves and the planet. This has to come in now. The fifth aspect is how you express this in life, because obviously passion its shadow is anger, and its shadow can be aggression. But the passion that Rumi is talking about is the pure, noble, tender, absolutely clarified, divine passion. And
we know the idea of passion also, it is described with Christ, of course.
Right.
The passion of Christ.
Right.
And passus.
Well, passus actually means suffer. And passion has the root suffering. Passus means he suffered, passus says he suffered.
But it also includes the idea of accept, as in embrace.
Right. To embrace the cost and burden of divine love, and then to work out of that acceptance of the embrace of divine love in the world. Passion has
it's opening the heart to the reality of what's before you.
Yes.
Not talking about an illusion of what's before you.
Right.
But the hard, sober reality of what is actually happening today with our myriad human choices.
Right. And really allowing our hearts to be broken open.
Exactly.
Because when the heart is shattered open,
Yep.
it finds, Rumi says, this fountain of deathless passion within it which never runs dry.
Right.
And that fountain of deathless passion is the fountain that sacred activists are going to need to have to drink from if they're going to go on going on in the middle of all this madness.
Exactly.
But they're going to have to learn the fifth lesson that Rumi is trying to teach us, which is that the way this passion expresses itself in the divine nature is through what the Sufis call adab. It's a very difficult word to translate, but
And that's Persian?
it's Arabic and Persian, and it's in all the major Islamic languages. It is courtesy of soul, deep tenderness and respect for all life. And this runs through all of Rumi's poetry, but there's a wonderful story that represents it in his life, which I love so much.
Uh-huh. Does it have the sense of tempered? Does it have the sense of respect?
Oh yes, it has all the noble virtues within it. It incarnates all of the noble virtues.
Okay.
And Muhammad is the supreme example to the Muslim mystic of Adab. And there's a wonderful story, which is the one, perhaps I'll tell you this one. It's
Please.
just the one beautiful example of Muhammad's Adab was one day his cat was sleeping on his sleeve, and he adored his cat. And instead of waking his cat, he cut off his sleeve. And this is more moving when you know that Muhammad only had 2 tunics. So he was prepared to sacrifice one of his tunics so that the cat could go on sleeping.
Yeah.
And there are many stories which show Rumi having the same kind of exquisite courtesy to all beings, which is one reason why he was so universally loved in his own time. Rumi was a great aristocrat of the heart. And this aristocracy of the heart is something that sacred activists really need to have at this moment, because so many times we put off people and make people deeply dismayed by aggression. I think there is a way that Gandhi and Dalai Lama and Rumi show us of really standing up for what we believe without insulting and demeaning other people. This is very hard, but this flows from this true passion.
Yeah, it sounds, I'm reminded of the Sanskrit idea of upaya.
Yes, skillful means.
Skillful means.
Yes.
Feeling the passion, feeling the commitment, being aware of it, and yet having a way of delivering, of expressing that is aligned.
And the
that
Buddha
will not
says again
be-
and again, doesn't he? Always be polite, always be gentle.
Yeah.
Because words are so powerful, and that if you use them with cruelty, they will stir up aggression and resistance. And that's the last thing, we don't need any more of that.
Exactly.
God.
Exactly. We're bringing forth the opposite of what it is we really seek.
Absolutely.
If we are aggressive in our speaking.
And I think that story of Muhammad and many of the stories about Rumi exemplify something about his relationship with the world, which is that he really, like Muhammad, treated animals with tremendous tenderness, and animals related to him. And to carry on the cat theme, one thing that many people may not know is that Rumi lies in his magnificent tomb in Konya with his hands folded over his cat. His cat jumped off his bed when he died, refused to eat, and was buried by Rumi's daughter's insistence with him, and asked why she did this absolutely unprecedented thing. She said because he was a friend to all creation. And I think, Mitchell, if the human race doesn't really stop torturing the animals, stop butchering and torturing the animals, we've created a vast Auschwitz for the animals. Yeah. The tsunami of black karma is going to sweep us away. So this adab towards the creation is not some luxury of a few mystics. It's something we have to learn if we're going to be given the divine grace of survival.
Mother necessity.
Mother necessity. The sixth aspect, I think, is something that his life exemplifies, and that is that if you get into connection with your divine nature and this ishq, what happens is that you're graced with unbelievable creativity. Before he met Shams and before he went through the crucifixion experience that changed him and resurrected him, Rumi was a provincial intellectual. Through this experience, he became the greatest mystical poet of the world, the Shakespeare of the soul. And I think he's saying through his poetry, again, to all of us, he said, don't idealize me. Why don't you plunge into this fire and be transformed? You have no idea of what you could be, what you could achieve, what you could do if you allowed yourself to be transfigured by divine passion, by divine knowledge, by divine ecstasy. Waiting for the human race is a wholly new level of creativity on every level, in every art, in every science, when the divine connection has truly been made luminous and solid and vibrant. And Rumi's whole work, 3,000 odes, a great mystical epic, etc., is showing us that creativity.
Right, exactly. And he's also saying, what you're saying here, Andrew, is that don't look at me. Develop your own relationship with the divine.
Burn.
Get it yourself.
Right.
Be in that fire yourselves.
Right.
And let it
and let yourself
flow.
Be governed by it and dance with that fire in the world.
Right.
Take it out and be creative on every level with that fire. It will give you everything you need.
What we see so much, and I've been speaking about this whole idea of the idolatry of celebrity.
Oh, God.
And how a problem this is
that
shows up everywhere. It's people attributing all of the powers of love and creativity outwardly to others, and becoming bereft themselves.
To be so sad if we just idolize Rumi instead of catching fire from the same fire that he caught fire from, and being Rumified.
That's right.
And being Rumiettes in the world, getting out there and Rumifying ourselves. That's the point. He's throwing a firebrand so that we can catch flame and go out and be firebrands ourselves. Sacred activism.
That's right.
And the last aspect is, I think, perhaps the most significant of all. You know, you and I have talked many times about what this terrible crisis could lead to, and must lead to if we're going to survive, and what it could lead to and must lead to is a birth on a massive scale of divine humanity. A humanity that has been chastened and humbled by ordeal, chastened and humbled by the revelation of its shadow, this immense shadow that is destroying everything, but also illumined by divine grace from the crucifixion experience, resurrected in divine grace to live on the earth and co-create humbly with the divine a wholly new set of institutions and ways of being and doing.
A whole new race.
A whole new race that will be and act in a wholly different way.
The birth of what we are referring to generally as an enlightened society.
Right. This is possible. There are the signs of this, the return of the divine feminine on a massive scale, the massive availability of the mystical traditions, incredible signs. They're still very, very fragile, and of course they're very, very menaced and very threatened by a great orgy of evil and destruction that really could take us with it.
Aggression, ignorance, the poisons of these, of greed.
And psychosis. Let's face it, humanity is on the verge of committing mass suicide.
Oh, yeah.
But for those of us who really know that the birth is real, because to a certain extent, and with all of our faults and failings, we're living it. And I know that the birth is real. It's living in me, thanks to Rumi, because Rumi has been such a guide and such an inspiration. Rumi's life itself, his amazing life, is a sign that the birth is real. It's a sign that a human being can live on the earth for 30 years, which is from about 1247 to 1273, when he actually left his body on December the 17th in Konya. For 30 years, Rumi lived in the glory and passion and peace and serenity and tenderness and mystical power of the birth of the divine human. He was a divinized human being, and everybody in his world knew it. They felt it, they saw it, they knew it, and when he died, all the different religions celebrated him as a saint of their religion. Christians said he was like Jesus.
Incredible, right?
You know, Jews said he was like Moses, and of course the Islam said he was the light of the eye of Muhammad. So this is immensely inspiring to us now, because we need that example very deeply. Otherwise, all of this talk of the divine birth will seem so much talk. We have to have in our heart's eye images of beings who really have lived this birth, and in his poetry and in his mystical presence, which you can connect with through opening to his poetry. He's very much alive, Rumi. He's more alive than either of us.
It's really amazing to think that this goes back some 800 years, and yet it feels
What
like
is
in
time for
some
God,
ways,
Mitchell? What is
nothing,
time for God?
a grain of sand, Andrew.
It's a blink.
You know, a blink, exactly. But it has the current power of, you know, yesterday's powerful conversation.
Well, it has the power of a final realization being given to us in a final time.
Yeah, exactly. It has that essence. It has that, can you say rumination? It's a guiding light. It's a phrase I've used just because
it's a pillar of fire in the darkness of our time.
Very true.
Guiding us to the divine birth in the human.
Right. It's a true exemplar.
Absolutely.
And we bow to it as such.
And we bow to it, but we mustn't bow too much. We must also live its truth.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, to idolize Rumi, instead of living Rumi's teaching, would be such a mistake at this moment.
Okay, I amend. Bow and embody.
Bow and embody. We accept.
Wonderful. Andrew, thank you so much for your extraordinary work in this domain.
Thank you.
Really, it is effervescing outward. It is radiating with passion.
It's not my work, it's his work. I really feel if anything is going on in my work with him, it's because of his grace, and I am eternally grateful to him.
In fact, the work before us is all of our work.
Right.
We are all stepping up to the plate, empowered by Rumi, empowered by and guided by you, by me, by the idea of a better world.
Right.
This is our guiding force because we have the impulse toward its creation.
Right.
And toward our own inner deepest revelation. And all who can help and all who are helping, we say thank you. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I'll see you all next week.